You see, back in my day, you could fuck a waste hole partition wall in someone's front garden, and it was fine, is the point I'm making. Nobody batted an eye. This is before the nanny state, where if you walked past someone's house and you saw a waist-high partition wall, and you saw a particularly sexy cement job, beige and tarty, like so, humping up against it wouldn't yield complaints of, oh, you'll scratch your dick.
It's the woke mind virus.
It's the woke mind virus. Thank you, at last.
The thing is, back in the day, there weren't so many cameras, so the fact you were fucking it would be obscured by the waist-high fence. Now, there's a camera on the other side of the waist-high fence to catch it.
Well, and everybody's got a camera in their pocket, and so they're whipping it out.
And they stop you from whipping it out as a result. I mean, I'm just glad that I'm here with like minds. Here on the Steph Rogan podcast, where we seek truth in the most logical of places, and we stand up for people that squat a bit so that they can hump a partition wall. You know the type. Bit of ivy on the side with those rattly metal gates with the arched top and the little latch that you reach around the back for. You know what I'm talking about. Like, come on, this is values.
Look, if you want to scratch up your genitals on a wall, that should be your business and not anyone else's.
My business, and not the owner of the house's. Like, this is the other thing where, like, suddenly homeowners' rights come into it.
They own the house, not the waist-high wall.
Not the waist-high wall, not that side of it. Surely my taxes cover that just as much as my sperm is, like, someone's sperms. And, like, I'll happily pay for someone else to fuck a wall. I've not done it.
Look, as long as you give it a little wipe down afterwards, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying there's anything to be ashamed of. I'm not saying there's harm and foul. Just like last week when I talked about squatting on the pumpkin stalk, right? None of that's anything to do with me. And no matter what those farmers say, I'm not known throughout Yorkshire for my behaviours. That's what I'm just trying to let people know.
No, you're just talking in hypotheticals, and the rampant wall fucker is someone else entirely.
Yeah.
May they never be caught.
But Yorkshire does have a lot of walls that don't even have cement. It's just a lot of crevice. It's a lot of hole. And it's asking for a grouting.
If you fuck a hole in a wall, you haven't even touched the wall at that point. You fucked a hole. And no, you can't own a hole. A hole is an absence of something.
Yeah, you can't own nothing.
Right.
Liberals.
You can't own the fuckable hole in the fence.
Coming up next, an interview with Howard Stern.
Welcome, it's Podquisition.
Oh shit, it's video games. Sorry, that was a different podcast I've been auditioning for. Yeah, this is the game one, isn't it?
It is.
This is the one where we do games sometimes.
Everything I have prepared is right-wing rhetoric dressed up as centric sensibility.
That typically is a gaming podcast, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's perfect. We'll fit right in.
Yeah.
Fuck Starfield's pronouns.
I can't believe character selection would let me choose to be a girl. Boy is the only character. It's the only non-political.
Video game make gender boobies. No happen have for me. Penis angry. Welcome to the Angry Penis Hour.
Oh, what was that one? Stellar Blade that had a demo leak the other week where just there were screenshots going around of what looked like just a literally naked character. That's all that video games should be. No other video games.
It's all I want video games to be. If we're honest. Like, the only way that could have been sexier is if she had, like, a bit of a concrete ledge on top of her.
Oh.
That girl, like, a bit of a concrete ledge, that kind of one that's a slight arch.
Oh.
It's a little bit brutalist architecture, but very 80s. It wouldn't be like a terraced house, like a full long line terrace, but like a good sort of, like, triple detach. Yeah.
So who's played video games
I'm not a wall fucker.
No, definitely not a wall fucker.
Mm-mm.
Well, should we start by just dealing with our Balatro addictions?
Oh yeah. We're both like well down this rabbit hole, huh?
It sounds like you're having a cosmetic procedure done.
Yeah, I just can't stop getting more Balatros injected.
Yeah.
It's doing wonders for my complexion. Yeah, how are you falling down that rabbit hole, comrade? How's it going for you?
I mean, I've reached a point where I'm just sort of doing the thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm actually still enjoying it or if it's just the thing I'm doing for the time being. I do get satisfaction out of winning runs. I get frustrated by some elements of it. The difficulty scaling is interesting, but I don't know if I like it. Basically, when you've won a round with any of the decks, it unlocks the next difficulty for that deck.
Yeah.
And each of these difficulty settings adds a additional modifier to play to make it more challenging.
The very first one, I think, you don't get the monetary reward for the small blind, you still get your monetary reward for, like, hands that haven't been used, but it just means you have, like, a little less between rounds money every 3 or so hands that you play.
Yeah, and, well, for one thing, the strategy I typically employ is build up to 25 so I maximize the interest and can buy anything I need to for the rest of the round. So that immediately hinders that, and that's not necessarily a problem. And I think the intent is to also get you to interact with the tags, which are what you are given if you choose to take the blind instead of playing the hand. And I don't care for that necessarily.
Yeah, I've really not been engaging with those.
Now, at the same time, it's not that much of an impact in the early game as you might think, because you probably can't afford to buy anything in the first shop that you're going to wind up skipping if you take the blind.
And you can generally get through, like, the first 3 hands or so just with a completely vanilla deck while you're building up some resources anyway.
Right, but it does inject a lot more luck-based success into those opening hands, because really, by the time you get to the second big blind, you need to have something, one of the mechanics that is producing a decent additional set of chips as reward.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's a joker with a multiplier or leveling up your most commonly used hand a couple of times, you need something by that point. And so the financial restriction on that can be significant, because you just might not have decent luck in those first few hands, and you might have been able to get a reroll in if you'd had a little more resources available. I think that's a pretty steep jump. And the second jump is fairly steep, too. That one increases the rate at which chip values required to win rounds increases.
Yeah, and that's why I've generally not been playing with the difficulty modifiers so much, as I have been, like, completing a run with one deck type and then just moving to a completely different deck.
Yeah, but I've won it with every deck that's available, and the only way to unlock new ones is to beat it on progressively higher difficulty settings.
Yes, so that is eventually the thing that happens.
Yeah, so I want to say I'm still enjoying it. I'm still playing it, although I think I might be reaching the end of that road.
Yes, the line between enjoyment and compulsion with a game like this can be a fine line.
Yeah, but I mean, I like the way the mechanics layer on top of each other and interact. I resist changing my deck. I'm resistant to that because I understand the odds, And so unless I am going for very specific scoring, if that's a flush, or if I wind up with a card that rewards on evens or odds, I might try to adjust some of the values on cards just to have more evens or odds. It depends, and I'll still do a bit of that. But for the most part, it's the jokers and increasing the score values of the ranks, I think, that strategically is the most effective. And so I tend to stick to that. But what are you doing with it?
I'm reaching a similar point with it where it's less the thing that I am obsessively sinking time into and, like, desperate to play more of, but it is a game that I know I am going to leave installed, and is going to be, like, I'm regularly going to end up dipping into this on, like, travel where I'm looking for something not too brain that I can do a quick round of and, like, put away without, like, having to reach a specific point to do that. It's going to be in that rotation. I really enjoy it, but I know that if I play it at the obsessive rate I have been playing it much longer, it'll be more compulsion than fun at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I'm stepping away a little bit while I'm still feeling very positive about it, so that it can be a nice treat to dip back into before I burn out.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I'm probably going to be doing that very soon as well.
But yeah, that game is a real dopamine factory that got its hooks in quick and got its hooks in hard, and that is real engaging, and I'm glad that it's gonna be there as a little thing I can dip into every now and then. Steph, should we talk about the thing that we've both played more of this week, that you've now finished and I haven't quite done yet? How are you feeling now you've finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
I gave up. I stopped fighting any of it. And I am now convinced it is operating on a whole different level to other video games. And again, I've not really paid much attention to the sort of community response and criticism elsewhere, so I don't know how others are receiving it, but to me, it is on some level that other games just aren't working with and can't work with, because some of the stuff this game does has to rely on the fact it's a remake, because so much of what this game does is fuck with the concept of Final Fantasy VII in as many dumb ways as possible, up to and including, like, fucking with the whole fan base. And I am in awe of it.
I haven't finished it yet, but I can see a lot of ways in which this... I'm trying to put words to it still. I've never played a game that feels simultaneously like it has so much reverence for the thing it is a remake of, but also has no interest in just being that thing again and doesn't care how you feel about that.
Yeah.
And those two things where it's simultaneously like, hey, look, remember that game you loved? What if we gave you an opportunity to, like, revisit it? Beautiful, modern controls, this really polished experience. We're going to give you so much more depth to, like, get to know these characters as individual people and really, really get to, like, build your friendships with those characters that have meant so much to you since they were tiny little polygons on a screen. But also, what the fuck was that game we made? We're making this now, fuck you. And both of those simultaneously exist.
Yeah.
And neither of them feels like it resents the other half of the game for being that.
Well, that's part of what I love about Rebirth and Remake. The fact that it really makes the point that what has happened and what all the fans and everything are familiar with, that game from decades ago, has happened. And you can keep enjoying that, and that is fine. That can be canon, that can be the stuff what happened. And once you accept that, you have to shut your fucking mouth, because we are messing with it for fun. The fact that it seems like a lot of people have bought into it, and that they got away with it the first time, and are like, right, what can we do now? And they've made a weird, sarcastic remake. I love it.
It really feels, so far from what I've seen, and I reckon I'm like one more big weekend of playing it away from seeing the end, probably. It feels like they went, look, we have this much bullshit we want to do that is not Final Fantasy VII Remake as you imagine it. And we're putting that on a set of scales. And if we're going to put it on the set of scales, it's going to weigh it towards silly nonsense we want to do. So to get people to buy in on all that silly nonsense, we're going to take the original game that people loved and, like, add a whole shit more stuff that's, like, expanding on moments you loved and expanding on characters and, like, really giving you what you were asking for. And we're going to give you so much of that we're going to try and make the scales balance while there's all this bullshit over here.
Yeah.
And it's wobbling on that line. It's weighing well enough that I'm not seeing people complain about the changes, and it's rare to see a thing change this much and simultaneously be enjoyed by people who wanted something new and people who wanted what was old.
Yeah, I think this game shows that the difference between brilliance or a travesty is perception. Because make no mistake, this game is a travesty. This game is an absolute piss rip, an absolute blasphemy to the original game. But because everyone's loving it, it's fine. If they'd done this to Star Wars, and I mean, let's face it, there is a lot of shared DNA, I think, creatively between Rebirth and The Last Jedi. A film I've rarely shared my opinion on, but I do think it's the one good Star Wars film. And there's a lot of shared DNA between those two things, where a lot of it relies on your familiarity with the original precious source material, so it can upend it. and show you a different way of looking at things.
Mm.
And you see that several times in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, sometimes very obviously. Like, this one in particular does a good job of introducing the idea that, hey, the Cetra might not be, like, pure goody-good.
Mm.
And these guys over here, you've only ever had the perspective of their enemies.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not, like, this one whole race of villains. And they do a really good job of just taking very black and white details from the original game and giving them that depth that was never there. And that extends to the characters as well. Like, this game spends so much time showing downtime for the party and introducing little sub relationships between them. Like in Remake, we had Aerith and Tifa, were the fact they were like co-conspirators to a kind of long-suffering Cloud is a lot more defined. And in this, you've got stuff like Barrett and Yuffie have a very clear sort of light-hearted antagonism.
Oh, their dynamic is one of the best changes I think that's been made. I think Yuffie's personality is a lot easier to make fit within an ensemble when Barrett is the target.
Yeah.
But it also gives Barrett a lot of opportunities to not just be the stoic, grumbly man because the planet is in danger, because it forces him to be stoic and grumbly about silly little jokes and breaks down a little of that stoicism.
And he does.
It's good for both of those characters. It lets them grow.
Yeah, and there is real growth here. Like, there is some character development in the first, like the original. Some of which is lost in translation, because the original English translation, which is obviously the one most people are going to be familiar with, did lose a lot of like tone and intention. But the characters were a lot more simple, and the character growth was a lot more sort of, this character's an arsehole, this character's less of an arsehole now. Like, dramatically less of an arsehole. Or they just don't change at all. They just have a few throwaway lines that's like, I guess I've softened up a bit. Whereas this one, like Barrett, throughout this game in particular, you really see him become nicer and more open, and they do a really good job of showing like the similarities between him and Cloud, both being loners. There's even a joke at one point where like Vincent joins and they're like, God, Barrett's like, the last thing we need is another loner, and then Cloud's like, I agree, and then they're like, oh, you mean like, you know, fun stuff like that. And yeah, like by the end of it, I loved every single character. Every single one of them. And they were all fun to play as well. Like, I wanted them in my party and spent a long time, like, constantly switching party lineups. Because they're all really fun to play. And they're all really fun to spend time with. Except when you're in Cosmo Canyon and every time you fast travel or get on a chocobo, there's a 50% chance Yuffie will sing about being on a chocobo, and I fucking hate it. Also, chasing Mooglets. That's the worst shepherding minigame I've ever played. I hate that.
Oh my god. I don't like the whole, hey, we're just gonna do bullshit to annoy you while you try and round us up. And I could forgive it if it wasn't also a place where I'm being taunted by these uncanny valley abominations.
They're horrible. They've got Pika Man torsos.
Their faces have the problem that the original Sonic the Hedgehog did in the live-action film. Too much humanity to the face, specifically too many human teeth.
Too toothy. Horrible long bodies. Creepy music that's like out of Kingdom Hearts, except a Kingdom Hearts soundtrack that slipped something in your drink. Like, I don't like it.
Something that uncanny should not be allowed to fuck with me and laugh at my expense.
Yeah, and when you've rounded them up, they shouldn't be able to still shoot you. The one that does the little, like, Sonic Boom wind discs, I want to pick it up by its feet and, like, dash its head against the tree stump. Oh, I fucking hate it. But yeah, I did finish it. I was sort of sad to see it go. Like, even though I spent, like, I put over 90 hours in it by the end.
Yeah.
Did all the world intel. There were a couple things I didn't polish off. After I finished it, I did go and do the Four Fiends, the Pirate Treasury thing. Part of me wants to, like, go through and do all the Battle Square and all of this, but part of me knows I'll never want to touch, like, Dog Rocket League, and I'll probably not want to, like, go for 100% perfection on the Cactuar, like, killing minigame and stuff.
I know for me the big one is some of those piano tracks I'm not gonna fucking... It's, at first they were fine, and then there's one that was, I think it was the Chocobo tune, but like a very jazzy orchestration.
Yeah.
Where, like, I just couldn't get my head around... Like, it's a tune I knew really well, being played in a washy kind of timing where I just could not predict when it wanted me to play things.
With the sticks being a kind of, like, sometimes vague input. I see what they were going for, and it's frustrating because I love the piano covers that they have for that. And there's something very satisfying about hitting that left trigger and the music getting that extra layer to it when you do it. But you're right, it's fucking hell.
I think for certain tracks, I really enjoy that minigame. For other tracks, it's the ones where they get experimental. I can't be multitasking my brain on those 2 circle wheels and also going, my brain says the next note should be now, but it's actually half a beat from now.
Yeah. While we're complaining, radio towers, we didn't need them on top of everything else. When you've already got a fully functional, excellent card game that's also a horror anime... Do you really need radio towers? And this game really does feel like it needs everything. Again, I said it last week and on Jimquisition and in the review I'm writing. It is like someone said, this is the last game ever being made. If you've got ideas, you've got to use them now because there ain't another game after this. And they had to put it all in. And some of it is half-baked. And some of it is so much more robust and enriching than it should ever have been. I kind of want to boot up the game just to play more Queen's Blood. On the actual Queen's Blood storyline, I haven't done the final one yet because it's such a difficulty spike. I have not had a deck that could touch what that's doing, I don't think. So I've got to do, I think, some of the Gold Saucer ones, but my God.
I'm really enjoying Queen's Blood still. Jane made a deck the other day that was really interesting that we've been having fun with. You fill up the board as quickly as possible with, like, really low-level things. Don't even worry about getting, like, pawns on the board. You are just trying to get board control. And some of those really cheap things that you put out will be things that, if you destroy a card for any reason, that card gets stronger. And they're all, like, really cheap ones, and then you go through with, like, your last hand of 5 or 6 cards, and they're all ones that you play on top of other cards.
Yes.
So you're replacing bad cards with better cards, but also, like, every time you do that, like, 5 cards in the back go up a level, and you do that, like, 4 or 5 times, like, right at the end, and suddenly you've got a whole back row of, like, 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
Getting some, like, 40, 45, 46 to 0 scoring games of Queen's Blood. So satisfying.
That's what got me through some of the real late game ones, was I was like, right, this whole, like, just trying to rack up points is not cutting it anymore. So I started having to add some ones that were destroying enemies. That worked for a bit, but even that started to be unreliable. And then when it came down to, let's do the big score ones, let's get those big scores by destroying our shit and throwing in cards that power up or do interesting things with your allies being destroyed and stuff. And that got me to the very final one, which is just racking up points so quick. I think I need to start building a deck that's probably too clever for me. Because some of the cards, I'm like, I can tell how good that is. I'll never be able to have the forethought to build a scenario to use it.
Yes, and I'm willing to put that thought in when I get to the point that it's required, but for now, being willing to destroy my own stuff for points I'm glad to hear that's going to carry us a lot of the way.
Oh, yeah. And I'm finding that you're getting some really good cards as well, like doing the Gold Saucer ones, so we'll see what we get from there. I would like to, before I finally put it down, I would like to knock that Queen's Blood challenge off. Because it is such a good game. I got into it probably more than Gwen. Well, maybe more than Gwen. It's very close.
I really hope they release a standalone, like, I can just sit and play this on my phone.
Yeah. It'll be monetized to fuck, sadly.
It unfortunately would, but just let me play Queen's Blood on my phone against, like, a random rotation of computer enemies, or play it against other real people. Just let me get my phone out and Queen's Blood a bit.
Yeah.
Fucking love that.
Make sure you keep that music. Make sure they keep that little jazzy music. But also borrow the Gwent one, because every now and then I'll also want to hear, hey! Na, 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 hey! Like, I want to hear that sometimes as well. Please, thank you, Square Enix, thank you.
I've got one other thing I want to talk about that I played by myself this week.
Uh-huh.
I've been playing a game that apparently came out on PC and Xbox, I think like a year or two ago, but it's just come to PlayStation and Switch. Really interesting little game called The Veil: Shadow of the Crown. This is a first-person sort of medieval combat adventure game. It's maybe 6 hours long, but you are playing as a blind princess in first person using audio cues to navigate and do combat. The gist of the plot is you were travelling somewhere in a sort of carriage, and suddenly war breaks out across the fucking nation, and you are a long way from home, and you are trying to, without being noticed that you are of the royal family, make your way back home and journey back to your family, traversing a nation that you are not familiar with exactly where you are, and doing hand-to-hand combat. And the game does some really interesting stuff. Not only how it uses audio to telegraph positioning in first person, but also its balance of functional audio versus world-building audio. Talking a bit broadly about it, in non-combat scenarios, generally you'll have a bit of a sense of what your objective is. Your character might sort of narrate to themselves a little bit what they're looking for. A good example of this, there's a flashback early on where you're trying to go beat up some kid who tricked you into falling down some stairs, and you know he's hanging out near the water wheel. So with headphones on, you are trying to rotate in first person in a 3D world until it sounds like the sounds of water and a squeaky wheel are in front of you, and then you start walking and you sort of tweak your angle until you reach them. And then combat, from the start of the game, when you go into combat, your perspective is sort of locked forward, and you have a sword in one hand that's controlled with your right analog stick, and you have a shield in your left hand that's controlled with your left analog stick, and you are listening for where the enemy or potentially multiple enemies are in 3D space, listening for the sound of them starting an attack animation, and either very quickly stabbing them with your sword before they have a chance to react, or blocking them with your shield to create an opening for you to get an attack in on. It works really well. I was surprised at how well it worked, and during all of this there is environmental sounds that make it clear like there is a wider world happening around you, but without those sounds being distracting from the audio cues you are relying on to get about. I've been impressed at how good of a job they have done of painting a picture with just sound. I have been impressed with some of the level design, and one good early example, there was a section where I was trying to sneak past a bandit camp without being detected on my way to a river that was behind the bandit camp, and sort of navigating my way around the edges and the outskirts, trying to listen out for if I was making noise and like avoid anything I was walking on that was causing too much noise, occasionally getting into fights and fighting one or two people off, and then continuing back on this little stealth crawl. It's a really neat little game. I am impressed at what it is doing with its audio design. It is a game that goes to great lengths to ensure that its protagonist is not at any point... The fact that she is disabled is not shied away from, but it is not used as an excuse to sort of limit her journey through that world. Good examples of this early on. I really like when she's being taught sword fighting by her father in a flashback. Like, he explicitly encourages her to use the fact that she's blind to catch enemies off guard and to recognize the fact they're going to underestimate her as something she can use against them in combat. It's a really neat little game. It's well worth checking out. There's very little that plays quite like it. It is a real interesting little title. What about you both? Either of you played anything this week?
Well, I finished the Thaumaturge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I just want to say briefly, fucking holds up all the way through. Really interesting story. The choices that you make wind up being really meaningful from a story and gameplay perspective. I want to play through it again and make different choices and see how those play out, because it feels significant. Very cool. Love that game. Really, really recommend people check it out. But there is something else that I played this week. WayForward developed another Contra game. Contra Operation Galuga, or OG. OG, because it's a remake of the original Contra OG.
I have to say OMG in response to that clever bit of abbreviation.
This is a real mixed bag for me. WayForward's done Contra before. They did Contra 4 on the DS way back. And, that was good. I was not concerned about their ability to make a very playable, fun Contra game. And in a lot of ways, they have really succeeded in that. It's got a range of difficulty settings in terms of there's an easy, medium, and hard. And then you have one-hit kill or a health meter that takes multiple hits. Very fair, very reasonable difficulty. I managed to beat it without too much trouble on normal with that meter. But it still feels like a Contra game in one-hit kill. It can be brutal. You can lose a bunch of lives very quickly.
Yeah, that's... I tried the demo and was like, you know what? This is lovely and old school enough, and I'm done.
Yeah, but it introduces a lot of mechanics that are found in later games in Contra. You start with a double jump, which is great because now some of those upward climbing sections are a little bit easier to deal with. You get a dash, and special weapons will level up to a more advanced form when you pick up a second one of an icon you've already collected. Now, that will downgrade if you take a hit and you're not in one-hit kill, which is an interesting, balance thing.
Yeah.
And you lose the weapon that you're currently using when you die. All pretty well balanced out. You can also buy perks from a perk shop in between levels using points that you've earned through play. These run from getting to start with a specific weapon of your preference, not losing the weapon when you die, not downgrading the weapon when you get hit, starting with a fully upgraded weapon when you pick it up, which can be gamed to get you to level a weapon back up just by picking something else up and then picking it back up again. Liked that. That was a fun little thing to fiddle with. Although, on that note, playing it in co-op, that's a bit of a challenge in terms of weapons, because there is no cooldown on the icons when they appear. So it's very easy for one player to pick up a weapon, the icon drop off of them onto the other player, and then they lose whatever weapon that they had because the thing drifts off stage or it goes into a pit or something. This is especially bad in the forced scrolling motorbike levels that have been added, because now the icons hit the ground and they fly towards you, and it's very easy to accidentally pick one up, and then it's easy to accidentally screw your co-op partner with it as well, which, isn't awful. It's fun. It's occasionally a little frustrating, but not that bad. Generally plays really well in co-op. The redesigned levels are very faithful on the whole, but they introduce a bunch of elements. There is a lot more hanging and jumping from hanging that occurs in it. And WayForward's done this before, this little trick, where they'll obscure the visibility of your character by a foreground object, but allow you to see where they are via a reflection on some other environmental object. It's a cute trick once, but it's one of those things that I kind of wish had been just done, hey, this is a cute, neat thing we did once, instead of then continuing on to do it through the level with a series of jumps and gaps and combat, where you're looking at a weird reflection for a very brief period of time and somewhat confused about how and where you're moving. But that's fine too. These are little quibbles. My actual issue with this game, it's clear the people developing this love Contra as a series and care deeply about it, which is what makes what I'm about to say hurt so much. there are two issues with the story mode in this game. Because the story mode isn't that fun, especially as compared to playing it in arcade. And the reason is that there's all this story there. There are dialogue-laden cutscenes that are skippable in between levels. That's fine. But then in the middle of a stage, there will be a segment where a character shows up and talks to you. And they are annoying. Because half the time, you're not progressing really. You're not really doing anything while they talk, especially on the bike levels. You're just stuck sitting on this bike, and the game will toss you an occasional enemy because they know that you're sitting there doing fuck all while this is happening. So they'll throw you a bone in an enemy to kill so that you're not totally bored during these sequences. But that's the lesser problem. The larger problem is with the plot itself. The original plot of Contra had Bill and Lance sent to the archipelago of Galuga to deal with the Red Falcon, or a terrorist group that have set up a base on the island. That is maintained. What they've added is that this island is the home of an ancient alien artifact that has existed on Earth for thousands of years, hidden there by its creators, containing all of the knowledge of the solar system, and has been subtly influencing humanity since its arrival. This is some fucking Nazi shit. Ancient alien theory is Nazi shit. And I am so bothered by its presence here. And, like, to a certain extent, they tried to, like, incorporate it in a somewhat tasteful manner. And while still being faithful to Contra as a game.
They're not issuing applications to the Thule Society or anything just yet.
No, it's not like that. Here's an example. The artifact is actually in a temple near a village of indigenous peoples who have been protecting it. Now, they know it's got power, but it's just there, and they just know it's there, and they're just hiding it. And I kind of like this element of it. For one thing, it transforms one of the weird high-tech bases from the original Contra. You know, the ones where the, like, spike walls would appear, and it was always just sort of weird that they were there. And now it turns them into pulp-style temple traps. And that contextually is kind of interesting to take it in that direction. But you can't escape the fact that the game explicitly tells you that the Contras, who are special warriors, get their specialness from alien DNA.
Perfect.
This is Nordic alien shit. This is the source of the Aryan race in some forms of Nazi alien conspiracy theory. Like,
sounds amazing.
I'm baffled. I'm absolutely baffled that this is here in this way and not commented on. I'm fucking shocked. I'm disappointed. I know you wanted aliens in there, and the Red Falcon are aliens. We're going to get the alien wars that follow this up. There was no reason to make the Contras special and deriving their powers from an ancient alien artifact. I'm sorry. That is fucking gross. And I hate it. And I'm sure it was done with the best of intentions, but it doesn't take a whole lot of scratching the surface of ancient alien conspiracy theory to see the Nazi shit and say maybe this is a bad idea. Fucking awful. I'm just very, very sad about what otherwise is a very fun run and gun shooter.
That is a lot.
Yeah. The final boss is fucking goofy looking as shit, too. All right? And I'm not going to feel bad about spoiling this. You remember how, like, the last boss of Contra is just the pulsing alien heart.
Yeah.
Right? It goes to that and it sets you up for that, and you start fighting it, and then Big Hand bursts through and pulls you up, and it's giant alien head that you're fighting. But it looks like somebody ripped the horns off the Violator from Spawn and punched his nose so hard that it flattened. It is goofy looking. Just dumb.
Brilliant.
Lame. Really silly.
Sounds like the best thing Konami's put out in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
Like, by their standards, this is a system seller.
It's truly, truly awful. And I am very, very sad about it. I like this
I've got a
series,
mild headache, Conrad. Fix it.
And I like this series, and I like Way Forward. And to see both of them shit the bed in this way is a real shame. Because I expect that it will get a sequel. I expect we're going to see a remake of Contra 3 The Alien Wars. They set up for it at the end. And it's going to carry on this fucking ancient alien shit. Not happy. Not happy. Anyway,
how many
that's
times did you get a spread shot in it?
Oh, I would always collect the spread shot if it's available.
Yeah, and I want hard figures. Otherwise, you can't really have an opinion, can you? I've decided to be a hardline presenter for the next 15 seconds. No, I'm done. I'm done already. It was too much effort.
What about you two? Anything else?
I played Alone in the Dark. A remake, reboot thing. It's kind of a straightforward remake. With a different sort of plot, but the same basic scenario as the very original Alone in the Dark from to 90s. Going off to the Dakota house in Louisiana in the 20s. You got David Harbour from The Stranger Things playing Edward Carnby. You've got, what's the other one? Emily Walker? Something. Played by Jodie Comer. Not sure where she's from. I think she's a new celebrity. I don't know many celebrities like beyond Dire Straits. But they're the main characters. And it's a pretty decent little horror game. Got a few modernisations to it, you know. They've got kind of a map similar to the more modern Resident Evil remakes and stuff like that. But it's also got a lot of proper old-style survival horror stuff. That's very notable in the puzzles, some of which are proper thinkers. Like, you've got a menu screen for clues, and some of the puzzles you work out by going through those notes. And the stuff you specifically need for notes are differentiated from the lore stuff, of which there is loads, because... The other thing about this game is it's the most Alone in the Dark game since the proper Alone in the Dark games in decades. Because, Lord knows, Alone in the Dark, I think it was called Illumination, which already from the title, no good. But the last Alone in the Dark game was a co-op game about staying in the light as much as possible, so you were never alone nor in the dark. The one before that was the fucking disastrous one on the sort of 360 PS3 generation.
I have a weird fondness for, but it's a terrible Alone in the Dark game.
It's fucking... I mean, it's a terrible game. It's a bad Alone in the Dark game. And a bad game. I tried doing a long play of it once, and it reached a point where it was unbeatable. Like, I couldn't progress and would need to start the whole game again. I believe it used to just be called Alone in the Dark, but over time it's been given a subtitle, so it's now Alone in the Dark Inferno.
Well, that was the subtitle for the Wii version, I think.
Ah, there we are then. Because fire effects was a big thing that they were very proud of in that game. And yeah, it was not an Alone in the Dark game at all, by any stretch. This one is, in several ways. Its third-person shooting is kind of modernised, but, you know, the original Alone in the Dark had terrible combat, which needed modernisation, so that's a good concession.
Oh, yes.
Like, to be honest, let's face it, the original Alone in the Dark games were shit. They played really badly, the monsters were pathetic looking, and it was kind of dull. So this might actually be... I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It's a very good game. Not brilliant, but I will say it's probably the best Alone in the Dark game ever made. Because... however influential the originals were, they were not fun to play. They were bad to play. But the authenticity of this one is best reflected in all of that lore, because you get diary entries, book excerpts, article excerpts, patient records and stuff. And just like in the original games, they are all read out. Big, skippable, thankfully, but long character monologues, many of which editorialize. So the person writing something will also mutter to themselves as they're writing, and that's not written down, that's just in the monologue. Like proper old school reference, which I'm just charmed by every time. Obviously, I didn't sit through all of them, but they are, like, hammily acted, like, they got that good melodrama. So, yeah, decent puzzles. The monster design, boring, not as stupid-looking as the original. Just kind of generic, splodgy, not zombie kind of things. But they are fucking violent. Like, this game actually was scarier than a lot of horror games I've played, just because the monsters, while not visually all that impressive, will just hurl themselves at you from around corners or through things, screaming at you. And they are legit scary to fight just because they're so aggressive and real quick movers. So yeah, it's got some good spooks and really nice atmosphere. Visually, it's a bit dated, a little bit janky, but it's got that kind of scrappy feel to it, where the people making it, you can tell they really like the source material, they really give a shit, and they really wanted to do justice to what everyone fondly thinks Alone in the Dark was. And they do it. And the result is not like a fantastic game, not an instant classic, but probably the best Alone in the Dark game ever. And the first Alone in the Dark game in decades to actually be Alone in the Dark. I liked it a lot. I was very charmed by it.
That's good. Yeah, I might have to play that then. It's fraught. The series is fraught for me because I do truly love the original, acknowledging its many, many faults and how dated it is. Like, a lot of the problems with Alone in the Dark were excusable at the time of its release.
Yeah.
But it is not, by any modern standards, a good game to play.
Every few years, I actually fell asleep watching it the other night. I watched the Retropray long play of the original 3 with Diabetes and Slow Beef. Still lovely, just hearing them slowly like lose their minds as the player picks up another lore entry.
Right.
And they have to start offering time skips for like the next 3 minutes is a monologue from this fucking game. It's a good little video series that points out just how drunk Edward Carnby must be throughout the game as he constantly picks up alcohol.
I love that first game, and I don't like any of the ones that follow, apart from that one that we talked about earlier that I like for reasons unrelated to Alone in the Dark.
Yeah, it's a real snapshot of its time. Yesterday I was super bored because I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and have nothing to do with my life because I made that my life for the past week. So I was listlessly looking on the PlayStation 1, like PS Now streaming and all of that shit. Briefly played Warriors Legends of Troy, an attempt by Koei in Koei's Canadian department to do a Warriors game, badly, and saw Alone in the Dark, Inferno, and just saw on the write-up how they were talking about how influenced it was by procedural TV shows and things. And that's like where it was the real snapshot of its time, where this was the generation that we'd have Alan Wake and Heavy Rain and these developers that were like real keen film study students and real into their like grown-up TV as we were entering sort of what many would call like the golden age of American TV. Terrible game, but I think an interesting snapshot of its time. I think someone who could be bothered to put more effort in than me could really look at a game like Alone in the Dark and the gameplay styles, the trends it's chasing there, both conceptually and mechanically. I think that game's a real good indicator of what games were like. Certainly the shit ones.
Right. Shall we finish up with a bit of newsy stuff?
Let's do it.
I'm going to read you something with no context, and I just want to know what your response is, with zero context as to why I'm reading it to you.
I'd love to.
Hi, you must be Nelson. I can't believe you're finally here. I'm Bloom, your future teammate in the Resistance. By the way, I figured we could spend some time together to check if we have a compatible vibe. You know, to build our dynamic duo. How does that sound to you?
Is someone trying to fuck me? That's my reaction, is someone trying to fuck me.
Someone's apparently trying to get you to join the Resistance, and I'm curious, would you trust this person if this person walked up to you and tried to get you to join a Resistance?
I want to resist them fucking me.
It's got real hello fellow kids energy.
It's got real, I'm the undercover cop at the protest trying to talk like, yes, viva la revolution, I see.
Is this advertising like one of those games that they used to like have rumours about in the 80s where if you get the high score, you'll be recruited by the CIA? Except this one's just to find agitators. It's like if you buy this game. And it's like that, what was that one where you control like a group of people? Tonight We Riot, was it called?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like it's like that, but if you play it, you get put on a list. And the CIA will come, but it's not to recruit you. There is a uniform, though.
No, it's none of those.
Okay.
This is your first glance into the kind of very appropriate for context NPC dialogue you can expect from Ubisoft's new Neo NPC project.
What?
Yeah. So this is an AI NPC dialogue writing program that Ubisoft's been showing off at GDC this week.
You don't say. This text was generated by a large language model. I never would have guessed it by its complete lack of tone, personality, or relatability in terms of grammar.
Don't you love being invited to the Resistance by an NPC whose dialogue sounds completely uninterested in you joining the Resistance? What amazing new technology it is! So yeah, Ubisoft is one of a couple of companies this week at GDC that has been showing off their what if you could talk to the video game and the NPC could talk to you with AI technology, and like, you know, there's a few of them I could have brought up, like Unity's also trying to fuck around with this tech at the moment. But I think Ubisoft is the best example that exists currently of, like, the weird problems that even the most polished renditions of this have. Large language models are built to say whatever sounds the most generically not incorrect of a response, and that is not good dialogue.
No.
This is not a replacement for someone writing, like, actual good fucking dialogue.
I was thinking about this the other day, like, this idea that there are people out there that believe AI is already a suitable replacement for written dialogue and stuff. And then I just thought about the corporate speak that we've made fun of for years. And it is no wonder that someone like Yves Guillemot or Android Wilson or whoever, you know, I even call him Android Wilson, like these people who speak like robots would look at this shit and think, yes, that is how we speak. This is how people speak. So they probably haven't realised that it's bad dialogue. They probably think, finally, some believable writing. At last, someone who speaks like I speak.
Engineers are also not noted for their communication skills in a lot of circumstances.
Isn't it, though? That is true. Yeah, maybe it's just, you know, AI is being pushed by people who don't talk like normal people talk, which is why they think AI is so fucking good.
Yeah. Other stuff we've got this week. I'll bring this one up briefly. There's not a lot to say about it, but there's a little bit of interest as to what's gone on with it. You know how we talked recently about the fact that, like, some comments were made that PlayStation 5 is entering the second half of its lifespan?
Yeah.
Well, that seems to have been confirmed because we now know that there's a PlayStation 5 Pro coming by the end of this year.
Well, there we are.
And the reason we know this is, like, usually you get these fucking rumours doing the rounds of, like, you know, potential hardware specs for upcoming things. This one's probably going to have more ramifications long-term on, like, third-party development for PlayStation, because we know about the specs of the PS5 Pro because some third-party developer with access to PlayStation's internal, like, development documents, like, one of the third parties trusted enough to be given in advance of announcement of a console specs on how to develop for it, just fucking started sending the development documents off the dev portal to random websites. Which is fascinating, and inevitably is probably going to lead to a smaller pool of third parties in future being sent these kind of documents this early. which probably means less third-party support for hardware going forward on launch day, because, yeah, this is a real way to get your company just absolutely fucking blacklisted from ever hearing about tech before it's announced by PlayStation ever again. You know, we could dig into the specs. The specs aren't, like, the most interesting thing in the world. Basically, I can summarize them as, you know how the PS5 box says it can do 8K and 4K 120 frames a second, despite very few PS5 games actually doing that? They want to use AI upscaling to make it actually do those things that the base PS5 box kinda says it can do.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I look forward to that surprise coming very soon. I got one last update for you, and it's the most important one this week. Stardew Valley's gonna let you drink mayonnaise.
You already can. The update came out yesterday, so...
Oh, thank fuck.
Yeah! I have slightly out-of-date information. I didn't realize it was live. You can drink mayonnaise now in Stardew Valley.
Good.
You can probably do other things, but that's the only patch note I know, is you can drink mayonnaise now.
So what mayhem led to this?
I don't know why you could drink the mayonnaise now.
Oh, you just can.
Yeah, I don't know if there has been a popular outcry over the lack of ability to drink mayonnaise prior to now. I'm sure that those people were out there, though, and congratulations on lobbying to successfully get this implemented in the game.
Yeah, you know, there were actual updates, like if you're married to another character, the spouse will now help out around the farm, blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. But I do just love, like, I love the way that this patch note was announced, which was a tweet that was just the text, you can now drink mayonnaise.
Is there a character that gifts you mayonnaise?
Maybe. Because, like, I like to think this wasn't intended as a patch note. I think it was just the developer Concerned Ape giving people online permission, like, hey, I've given you permission, you can drink mayonnaise now.
This one's on us.
Other such updates in Stardew Valley include, if you marry a character, there's now a 7-day honeymoon period in which they won't lie in bed all day being upset. They will wait at least 7 days after marrying you before going and lying in bed really sad.
It's about how long it takes me, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, if your spouse in Stardew Valley is real sad, they can, I don't know, go drink mayonnaise about it now. Maybe that'll fix your relationship problems.
God. Like, honestly, thank God. Like, the world's hard, but I feel good about that. I feel okay about that. I feel like we can all drink mayonnaise now.
I want the two things to be connected.
Yeah.
I want to be able to feed my partner mayonnaise until it fixes their depression. I want that to be an interaction this makes possible.
I am
Exactly.
leaving that alone. I am not commenting on the thing you just said.
Cool.
Speaking of which, though, when can you get Jonathan for another Boston's Favourite Son?
I will schedule immediately.
Mate, people loved the last one.
As well they should.
Plague Dogs 2 was through the fucking roof. People loved it. Yeah, are we done? Is that it, though?
That is it. I think that's it.
Oh my
I think
God.
we done did it.
Okay. Well, I done did being sit here interest for here. That's gone very wrong. Laura, what stuff have you done, please?
What stuff have I done?
Yeah.
Laura K. Buzz, you can find all the stuff what I've done. It's all on the internet somewhere or another. You can check out an accessibility review of The Veil, Shadow of the Crown that is going up this week. There is a video I've got going up this week with a content creator called Arevia, talking about the PlayStation Access Controller now it's been out for a couple of months, and whether opinions on that are any different from when it originally released to now having been using it a couple of months. I might have a freelance piece from Molly Evans going up about accessibility in activism, which I'm really excited to post. That'll maybe be up by the time you hear this. Just search Laura K. Buzz, you'll find all the things. What about you, Conrad?
Well, you could find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky. You can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda from me and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com. You can check out some of the other podcasts that I'm involved in. Let's Talk About Snacks, which is about snacks, and Red Planet, which is a show I produce about how we can help make the world a better place. And everything I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
That is true. Patreon.com/Jimquisition. That supports this and the show and the reviews that you can read on the Jimquisition.com. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, suddenly I forgot what URLs were. Should be a review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth by the time this podcast goes up. A lot of thoughts there, most of them positive because that game is something else. Looking to make my return to wrestling sort of late spring, early summer. First announced date is June 8th, where I'll be back in Blackpool for Pride of the Ring 3. I have been the PCW Women's Champion now for over a year, and fully intend to still have the belt by then. So yes, over 364 days as Women's Champion. Should have news of a new promotion as well soon, as well as some of the familiar ones starting in around the May, June, July sort of months. Other than that, thank you all so much for listening and supporting, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.